Mhm.
Hi, Ayelette. How are you?
I am doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. And on the Vegan Pulse, we explore compassion, creativity, and conscious living through the voices of people making a difference, the ones that we try to have here on the Vegan Pulse. And today, it's your turn, Ayelette.
I'm so pleased to be here. I've heard such beautiful things about you, and your conversations have been really inspiring and lovely. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Pleasure to have you. So let's start where you're situated, and then we'll talk about your journey into veganism, how you came
Yeah.
to this compassionate way of living.
Yeah. So I am currently based in Los Angeles, but I am originally from Boston and have lived in New York, Michigan, San Francisco, and even London for a semester. So I love to travel. My journey to veganism is, along the lines of what many people say, it's like I wish it had started earlier. I have been vegetarian for really most of my life, I would say. I mean, since college, basically, kind of since I've been out on my own. But even growing up, we had a very, I would say, sort of low to moderate, meat. So I absolutely, we ate meat, family meals for sure, but it was never considered sort of the required central component of a meal. So it was fairly easy for me to make the transition to vegetarianism. And I think like many people initially, you think, oh, I just don't want to eat the flesh of animals, but something that they produce, isn't necessarily causing harm, and you're kind of in that space for a while. I am honestly embarrassed to say that it really never dawned on me to dig in further to to the dairy and egg industries. As a side note, I will say that I'd always been cruelty free and avoided buying leather. And so I feel like in my non-food purchases, I was pretty close to vegan already. But when it came to food, I really just didn't have a concept like dairy, eggs, actually, and honey, right? As well as probably the other big one.
Right.
And it was only about a year and a half ago that something crossed my path related to the dairy industry. And for me, it was an instant just decision. I mean, once I became aware of the atrocities of factory farming, because my philosophy was already in that place of I don't want to harm sentient beings, I immediately just stopped eating, those three items. So it was a pretty quick change, although it came much later in life than I wish it had.
Yeah, for me too. And, like you said, you went into vegetarian because you think things produced from the animal wouldn't cause the suffering. You don't think about them. But then when you go further into those industries and the way that these poor animals live for an egg or for milk is atrocious,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
But many people in the vegan community talk about empathy, right, as a driving force.
Mhm.
How has empathy shaped your artistic journey in any unexpected ways?
What a great question. For me, as I think again, for most people in the space, compassion is what leads us, is what drives us. And I've taken that in a lot of areas of life. So even when I talk to people about it, I always really express that it comes from this place of empathy. And I try not to, lead with sort of the trauma and atrocities, just because I know that even for me, when it comes to behavior change, for example, when I'm on the other side of it, if someone wants to persuade me, if they lead with something that, causes trauma or that I don't want to see or hear, I know I am not perfect and I have ego and I will shut down. So imagining myself on the other side of it, I don't want to be leading with that. when I talk to other people about it, I want it to be something inspirational and aspirational, right? That you are excited to move towards. And that feeds into how I weave it into my acting and producing as well. So it's interesting. So producing wise, I did start last year, although admittedly going slower than I care to admit. But I partnered with someone who is both a sanctuary founder and a screenwriter, and both of us are really on the same page of telling stories that will move the movement forward, but again, leading with inspiration and even fun and delight, and showing that it's something that is exciting to be a part of rather than just leaving behind something. And it's not about restriction, right? It's about beauty and compassion, and that's a very different story to tell. And so that's absolutely leading the way, kind of the story that we're trying to communicate and put out into the world. And when it comes to acting, it's similar. There's a lot of people may, one of the key things about acting is you want to be able to really, for me, it's about telling a story that will help somebody else feel less alone in their challenging or maybe even traumatic journey. And when you're telling those stories that will move people and help them feel like I'm not the only person going through this and I can get to the other side of this, there are always people in that story that are not traditionally likable characters, right? But in order to tell the story, you, as an actor, you have to be willing to step into that person's shoes. And the truest way to do that is to really step into their shoes with compassion, because at the end of the day, every human being is just trying to deal with life. Even when they shut down because they don't want to hear about the atrocities of factory farming, it is because they are just trying to deal with life. They have their own connections, histories, traumas, challenges, family, financial instability, familial instability, or, health issues, or, I mean, they have, a lot of stuff going on with themselves that we may wish that they saw the bigger picture, but in that moment, they are just trying to deal with life. And as an actor, stepping into a character that you may not personally, agree with, or you might even personally judge on some level, you have to be willing to treat that character with compassion and really step in and think, what is it that they are, what's their perspective here? And most of the time it's they're trying to deal with their own challenges, and they might not choose to deal with it in the way that we would choose to deal with it, or that I as a person might choose to deal with it. But when you're telling the story, the truest way to tell it is to be human. And being human means you're just trying to deal with life, and you might make some bad decisions that other people disagree with. But that's how you can reflect being just a real person.
Yeah, totally. And I think there's two things that you talked about that I just want to bring again back. One is that you and this other partner who you talked about, who wants to make these movies. I think that is great because it's celebrating, because veganism is about celebrating life. And
Yes,
and we're so bogged
exactly.
down with trying to tell people, please
Right.
don't hurt the animals, please
Yeah.
save the planet, please,
Yeah.
understand what we're trying to tell you is not good for your health, for the animals, for the planet. But it kind of gets a little bit more murky and more
Yeah.
sad kind of a thing, but in a joyous, more true way, compassionate way, that might open up more eyes than
Yeah.
always just saying the negative parts about why we go into veganism. And I think that's lacking. We don't have that. We don't have people telling stories about vegans and how, for myself, I'm happy to be vegan. I'm
Right.
sorry it took so
Right.
long. And my
Exactly.
life has expanded ever since in such great ways.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And anyway, you said that perfectly. So yes. Yes.
And then the other thing that you touched about on was the fact that we're human, right? And as humans, we answer or respond in so many different ways, right? Because
Yeah.
we're not in somebody's shoes. When you think somebody might do this, they do that. And then we go, oh my gosh.
I know.
But it's because we don't understand exactly where each person is coming from because we have not all been brought up the same.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I mean, how many times I just assume, I think it's true of everyone, not just me, but how many times in the moment do I react in a way that when I look back, I feel a little ashamed or I can't like, I can't believe my ego, got in the way like that wasn't appropriate, and I should have, been more open or considered something else more or, and at the end of the day, the people that we're talking to are just in that, in the same day-to-day spot. And who knows what they have going on that year? Who knows what they have just going on in that 1 minute that you're talking to them?
Right. Now, you've balanced careers in both the arts and technology. Do you see opportunities for tech to support animal welfare or more ethical living?
Yeah. So I will say that one of the big conversations happening now is, of course, around AI and ethical use of AI, and that's a big topic on its own, which maybe I'll touch on it. It's really, I feel like, people are spending, days talking about that. So we don't, but let's say putting AI aside for the moment, I think that or the ethical issues, I'll say for the moment, there's no question that a lot of what we do is, we have so few resources to get, we're an ant, right? Trying to lift 200, I think it's 200 times our weight, um, and they do it really well. And we've been doing that pretty well, but we're trying to lift, 100,000 times our weight just because we have so few people in the space compared to, the meat industry putting out, marketing and, labeling and, policy and, there's so lobbying. And I mean, there's so much weight, right? I mean, it is very kind of David Goliathy behind us that, or behind the other side that really I think at a macro level, technology is here to help us basically lift more than we could lift without it, essentially, and be able to stack up against these just really the gargantuan kind of other side of it. And I think that is where AI helps because the other side clearly, is using, and I know it's two sides, but it, basically is, meat industry, it's, dairy industry, they're going to be using AI. And it's hard because I feel, again, with a sense of compassion, like I feel really sympathetic to both sides with the AI, with the ethical AI conversation. I absolutely understand that as vegans, we are part of a movement that says every bite matters, right? So, every prompt matters or does make a difference, right? And we're trying to be a movement that says, your choice for one meal actually matters. And so the discussion, so or one argument on the AI side is, well, one prompt doesn't make that much of a difference, and I'm not doing that many prompts compared to what the other side is doing or something. And on the one hand, that's true. On the other hand, we're a movement that has never really argued that before. We've always kind of argued the opposite, which is that every bite and every choice does, individual choice does matter. So I feel very sympathetic to both sides. And personally, actually, I've been spending the last month or so really researching and polling, seeing where other people stand, but also just understanding the underlying data and facts around it. I will say that where I land personally we can is that if we use AI thoughtfully, strategically, and minimally kind of circumscribed around just the exact things where it has the outsized impact, I personally am comfortable using it in that sense because ultimately the problem we're trying to solve, if we solved that problem and AI was still in use, we would reduce, all the environmental impacts, all the animal suffering, by, and I don't want to even say a number because I don't know the number at all. But if we got rid of factory farming, but we're still using AI, I think we'd be getting rid of what, 80, 90, 95, percent of sort of all of the impact. And so I'm okay sort of leaning into that little bit, knowing that ultimately if we solved this much bigger problem, we would actually be solving the majority of the problem.
Yeah, I concur. And as we said, you are a person with many facets. You were a lawyer, right?
I,
You were in technology. You're a producer. You're also something. I used to be well, I'm still a ballroom dancer, and I know that you've won a title in ballroom
yes,
dancing.
yes.
Um, and um, and you're an actor and a voice actor and how do I say, a regular actor, voice actor, regular actor.
Yeah. On camera, I was on camera. Yeah, yeah.
But all these things that you do have a demanding schedule on anybody. So, what practices do you do to help you stay grounded, energized, and aligned with your values? Because you hear people say, "Oh, I'm too busy," or "I'm too this," and "I'm too that, can't do it." So,
Yeah,
can you share?
yeah. And I will say that, for me, I've always thrived on having a wider variety of things to do. It's almost like because when I lean into one activity, the other part of my brain almost gets to take a rest. So I've always, rather than sort of always focusing on, one thing in life. Also, just to put some context, there are things that I've done in the past, but I'm not currently actively doing. So so I'm no longer practicing law. I'm not currently competitively dancing, but I do. Yes, I do a lot of things, and I think really the way I balance it is I and maybe I will take a moment. I'm not sure that this is totally conscious. But I think that I plant certain markers, let's say throughout my week or throughout the month. So, for example, I'm in acting class. So that's just, I have that kind of every week. And then I might have a couple of auditions, throughout the week or something like that. And, gigs here and there, et cetera. But I'll have sort of some markers that keep me grounded in a space and, in whichever industry we're talking about. And then I let things sort of sprout and bloom around those. So, for acting for me, those stakes in the ground is acting class. And then, things around it, happen, don't happen. Admittedly, some things fall behind, that I don't, I wish, didn't fall behind. For the animal movement, I have right now I have certain volunteer things. I actually start off my week Monday morning doing just a caretaking shift at a sanctuary nearby. It's about 25 minutes away. And for me, that is such a perfect way to launch the week because it grounds my whole week in these are the faces. This is why I'm doing this. And just gives me, it's kind of selfish too, because personally, my tank is refueled by interacting with animals. Period, full stop. I have a lot of animals that, allow themselves to let me be their companion at home. And in the house right now, I think I have seven. I have two dogs, three cats, and I'm fostering two bunnies right now. So for me, it refuels my tank to have that connection. So Monday mornings, I have that, and that kicks off my week. And then, of course, whatever, meetings, tasks, works related to either my volunteer work or even networking or, whatever events or anything like that. And just kind of let those naturally flow. But then maybe the opposite side is that I 100% say no when I've hit my capacity. So I don't schedule more than, let's say, four calls on any given day. If something has happened that's been really draining that day, I may, cancel or reschedule some other things that I have going on, whether it's that day or week or something. So I am very comfortable saying no in the moments when I need to take a break. And I think that allows for sustainability over time.
I think that's a very important point. You have to take time for yourself. You have to, no matter as much. I know I was working 60 plus hours straight a
Right.
week at, a dental association. And then I was doing my advocacy. My partner says for another 40 hours. So, it takes a toll
Yeah.
on you,
Yeah.
and you have to take
Yeah.
time to breathe, to
Yeah.
just settle down for a second, kind of a thing. So I do that, try to do that every morning. I'm a Buddhist, so I do my chanting in the morning. So that grounds me, that sets my day, that tells me who I am, what I want to be, what I want to put forward. So it's like, I call it my meditation kind of a thing, because it just helps me set my day right.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thank you so much for being on the Vegan Pulse. Is there any other words that you would like to share? And I don't want to be remiss in saying that you also had a Emmy winning uh,
Oh,
project that you did, the couch or something like that. It
yes,
seemed
not, yeah. So it needs a little bit of context, but
okay.
I'll be quick. So not Emmy winning, first of all, let me clarify that.
Okay.
But in the short form category, of course, it's not televised, but in the short form category, but there is a short form category of the Emmys that anyone can submit to.
Mhm.
Um, the year that I submitted, they were not letting all applications even onto the ballot to be voted on. So they might had a few hundred submissions because lots of people are producing short content, whether it's like a short series or a short film. But they were only letting 30 on in each of the categories, just even onto the ballot. So, you paid your money, you applied, but you might not even get seen. But for my short series, I did appear on the ballot as one of the 30 outstanding actresses in a short form. So I know, not quite, not definitely not winning, but it was a pretty significant milestone for sure.
Well, you still got, I
Yeah,
think that is
yeah,
pretty significant, because every time that you
yeah,
put something
yeah,
out, somebody gives you acknowledgement for it. I
yeah,
think that
yeah,
that's kudos to the person.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So now, would you like to leave our viewers with one last set of inspirational quotes,
Yeah.
tips,
Yeah,
anything like
yeah,
that?
yeah. I think what I would say is, if you yourself are a, compassionate, loving person, and that's who you want to be, if you aren't vegan, then all I say is I just invite you to do your own research. You don't have to, see what anyone else is sort of pushing out at you. Do your own research. Go online and just take a look at, dairy, egg, factory farming, animal farming, industries. And then just come to your own conclusion without anybody else's judgment or opinions. Just sit with yourself and say, this is who I want to be. This is something that's out there. And, and then just consider how the two might align. And for anyone watching who is vegan, I say yay. And and honestly, we're all in this together and we're all making the world a better place. And thank you for being in it with me.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Until next time.
Thank you, Nancy.
Bye.